Imagine you wake up in the morning, sunlight pours through your window, but something feels off. The world looks too bright, too overwhelming, like a dream you can't quite grasp. You get out of bed, step outside. The air is fresh, the sky is clear, yet a heavy weight presses on your chest. You don't understand why. Everything feels distorted. Colors are sharper than usual, almost blinding. Sounds seem muffled, like they're coming through water. Even simple conversations feel distant. You smile, but the smile feels hollow. You laugh, but it doesn't reach your eyes. You check yourself in the mirror. You look fine, healthy, normal, but inside something is off. You're not sick, but you're not yourself either. The world is familiar yet foreign. Every step feels surreal. Every moment feels like walking underwater. Have you ever noticed how your emotions can shape what you see? How sadness can make the brightest day feel gray? This is more than just a mood swing. It's something called Mood Congruent Delusion. Your emotional state, especially sadness or depression, can warp reality. It tweaks your perception, twists your senses, makes colors scream, sounds whisper, and moments stretch or shrink. Reality doesn't lie, but your mind does. Why does this happen? How can your brain suddenly turn the familiar into the strange? Is it a glitch, a defense mechanism, or something darker buried in the depths of thought? When your emotions infiltrate perception, the line between real and unreal blurs. You begin to question everything, not just the world, but yourself. And that question can be terrifying. The disturbing history. Throughout history, sadness and depression have been perceived differently. In ancient times, they were often seen as a moral failing or even divine punishment. In the 18th and 19th centuries, though, the rise of psychology and psychiatry began to explore these conditions from a scientific angle, framing them not as weaknesses, but as complex, physiological, and emotional states. Yet, despite our growing understanding, mood disorders, especially those involving delusions, have always been seen through a dark lens. The most terrifying aspect of mood congruent delusion is how subtle and insidious it can be. The person experiencing it often doesn't even realize that their mind is distorting the reality they perceive. One of the earliest documented cases comes from the famous psychiatrist and philosopher Emil Kraepelin, who in the early 20th century spoke about the connection between mood disturbances and perceptual distortions. He noted that when people were severely depressed, they would often experience an altered reality, where everything around them seemed bleak, hopeless, and at times, even dangerous. Fast forward to the present day, and modern psychiatry recognizes mood congruent delusions as a hallmark of various mood disorders, including major depression and bipolar disorder. But the haunting nature of this disorder is that it isn't just about negative thoughts. It's about how these emotions seep into every corner of your perception, distorting the very fabric of your reality. The scientific explanation and symptoms. Mood congruent delusion occurs when a person's emotions influence their perception of the world, causing them to interpret everything through the lens of their emotional state. In the case of sadness or depression, this can result in the person perceiving neutral or even positive events as negative or threatening. The brain, already in a depressive state, interprets incoming stimuli in a way that aligns with the sadness it is experiencing. The key to understanding this phenomenon lies in the way our brain processes emotions and perceptions. When we're sad, the brain's emotional processing centers, primarily the amygdala, become hyperactive. This causes an amplification of negative emotions, which can alter cognitive functioning. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for logical thinking and reality testing, becomes less active. In essence, the brain loses its ability to differentiate between objective reality and the subjective, emotional narrative that is being constructed. Symptoms of mood congruent delusions can manifest in different ways. Some individuals might experience a general sense of doom or hopelessness, even in the absence of any real threat. Others might develop specific delusions, such as believing they are worthless, or that the people around them are secretly trying to harm them, even when there is no evidence to support these thoughts. It's as though the sadness has created a filter through which they view the entire world. But this isn't just about thinking negatively. In mood congruent delusion, your mind starts to see everything through that negative filter. Imagine going to a friend's party and feeling like everyone is judging you, even though no one is. Or walking down the street on a beautiful day, but somehow the sunlight feels oppressive, the breeze too cold. Your mind is creating a reality that mirrors your sadness, shaping every interaction, every moment into something dark and ominous. A famous real-world case study. One of the most chilling real-world cases of mood congruent delusion can be found in the story of Sarah, a 34-year-old woman diagnosed with severe depression. Sarah had always been a social and outgoing person, but over time she began to withdraw from her friends and family. She stopped answering calls, canceled plans, and spent days locked in her room, unable to face the outside world. One evening, she received a text message from her sister, asking if she would join the family for dinner. Sarah read the message, but instead of feeling comforted by the gesture, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Her mind immediately started to weave a story that her sister was angry at her for not responding to her earlier messages, that the family would criticize her for not being fun or outgoing anymore. She spiraled further, convinced that dinner with her family would only lead to judgment and rejection. The next day, Sarah missed the dinner. Her sister, confused and hurt, tried to reach out again, but Sarah could only interpret the attempt as a reprimand, another sign of her failure as a sister. Sarah was caught in a loop, seeing her world through the prism of her sadness. It wasn't just the events that were distressing her, it was the way her mind bent them to fit her negative self-image. Eventually, Sarah's depression became so severe that she developed psychosis, believing that her family was conspiring against her, even though there was no evidence to suggest that this was the case. Sarah's case demonstrates how mood congruent delusions can slowly unravel a person's sense of reality, leaving them isolated and distrustful of the world around them. The twist and application. Now you might be thinking, I don't have depression, so why should I care about this? But here's where it gets personal. Have you ever had a day when you woke up feeling off, maybe a bit sad, and suddenly everything around you seemed to confirm that feeling? Maybe you had an argument with a friend, and for the rest of the day, you couldn't shake the sense that they were avoiding you. Or you received some bad news, and suddenly, everything in your life felt like it was spiraling downward even though nothing else had changed. This is the power of mood congruent delusion in action, but on a smaller scale. Even if you don't suffer from severe depression, your emotions still color the way you perceive the world. It's the reason why bad moods can feel like they're infecting everything, even the smallest details. It's the way your brain creates narratives feeding off your emotions to make sense of the world. The question is, how often do you let your emotions control the way you see reality? Are you able to break free from that emotional filter, or do you, like so many of us, sometimes get trapped inside your own emotional echo chamber? Mood congruent delusion isn't only about major depression or psychosis. It's about how our feelings can bend the way we see the world. What we perceive as reality can shift depending on our emotions. Even small emotional biases can change our thoughts and actions. They can make us misinterpret events or read meaning where there is none. Our minds filter reality through a lens shaped by mood. And if our minds can do this in small ways, what happens when the effect is stronger? When emotions take full control, reality itself starts to feel unstable. This is why understanding these patterns matters. Our decisions, relationships, and judgments can all be quietly shaped by invisible forces. That's why you need to watch the next video. We'll explore cognitive dissonance and its haunting influence on how we act, often without knowing it.